And one of my reactions was like, oh my God, she did it. Meaning like Emma Hayes actually made that move. That was my sincere reaction because I didn't know if it was going to be a move that she was going to be able to make.
Welcome to We Need to Talk Now, presented by AT&T. Y'all, I'm so excited for this because it has been a storm of soccer today. We are going to be talking about the USWNT roster that just dropped. But first, I just want to say we're definitely missing Ashley because she is dealing with the NBA draft. So she's everywhere talking about that. But I'm so excited because I have with me CBS Sports reporter and soccer analyst Jenny Chiu. Hello, Jenny.
Hello. Sorry, I didn't know that's when I cut in and say hello.
Hey. And then we also have with us the one and the only Sandra Herrera, who is the co-host of Attacking Third podcast and also a writer for CBS Sports. So thank you for being here, both of you.
I'm so happy. I'm so hyped when I got invited to hop on. I was like, yeah, let's do this. Love We Need to Talk Now.
Oh, well, thank you. And we love Attacking Third. Literally, I'm so excited that both of you are here. First, before we get into this conversation about this roster drop, listen, you need to like, subscribe, share, do all of the things. You see Ashley and I's information here, but also we need to talk. We need to keep this conversation going on every level. So share all of the things, subscribe in all of the ways that you can. And if you just listen to us on audio podcasts, that's cool too. We love that you're just listening, but make sure that you tap into your favorite podcast platform and you can just go ahead, scan this QR code, and all the information will be sent your way. So let's get right into it. The roster for the USWNT team dropped today. Emma Hayes did her thing. Right here, you see everybody that made the team. We're just going to point out a couple of people because y'all can read. So goalkeepers, Alyssa Nair is definitely in there. Casey Murphy. Defenders, Emily Fox, Naomi Girma. Midfielders, Korbin Albert, which we'll talk about a little bit later, Sam Coffey. And then forwards, Crystal Dunn, Trinity Rodman, and literally we have 18 people that are on this roster. Really excited to see what everybody can do. Listen, let's just jump right into it. Jenny, what are your first reactions to this roster drop?
First reactions are everyone's first reaction. The fact that Alex Morgan has been left off of this roster, I think, was what everybody kind of immediately put their eyes on. I think it was up in the air, right? We didn't know whether or not she would be included. I think back to the W Gold Cup roster where she initially wasn't included in the roster and then got added after Mia Fishel got injured. So that already was an indication that they were starting to move away from Alex Morgan, or at least try to. And then they called her back in and she had a good tournament. But yeah, I think that's what stood out to a lot of people. I know we're going to get into it a little bit more, but more than anything, I like the forwards. The fact that there are 18 players on this roster, you look at those forwards, there is so much attacking power and versatility in that front line. And I'm excited for that. Talk to me, Sandra, because you've been writing about this all day long. I want to know what you were thinking.
God, you hear me? I got phones going off still from this morning. Look, I'm with you, Jenny. I think the biggest thing to note is the fact that, look, Alex Morgan's on this roster. And I thought of you because I feel like over these last 6 to 9 months, I feel like on A3, it's been a point of conversation. The form that she's in, is it going to be good enough? The inclusion of Emma Hayes and her new era on the sideline as head coach, is it going to be is it all going to come together with Alex Morgan able to come on this roster? And we got our answer today. The answer is no. I think it's important to maybe kind of note what we heard out of her press conference as well and some of the decision making of that. She wanted to go in another direction, and that's reflected on this roster. So I'll say that's the biggest surprise, and I'll even kind of say maybe even some of the alternates were a little bit surprising for me too, where she decided to go to kind of maintain that competitive edge for the team, like who those spots went to as well, and how or will they be utilized during the Olympics.
Well, out of the alternates, who was the biggest surprise of the alternates? You know, you say that you're not really, seeing if they're going to be effective or those people would be able to participate even. So who was the biggest shocker there?
I think for me, because the rules are so not so different, but they're back to what they were for these Olympic Games. In the Tokyo Games, coaches were allowed to kind of utilize those alternates as part of a full 22 team roster. And that's not necessarily going to be the case for these Olympics. They're still going to be functioning as how alternates were meant to be used in prior Olympic Games, where their number may or may not be called up if there is some sort of, knock on wood, hopefully not, a catastrophic injury of some sort to a player and they're able to kind of come in and be part of the group. That means they travel with the group, they eat with the group, they plan with the group, but maybe they may or may not play, but they will be part of training camps and all of that. And we hear so much about the competitive edge in those training camps from all the players themselves, how it's like one of the most ruthless and competitive environments that they can be part of. So I'm sure that's important, in maintaining all that as you go to an Olympics, which is why I think it's so surprising that we do see two of those alternate spots going to rookies in their very first pro seasons with Washington Spirit. So I love what Corey Bethune has been doing. That's also a player, I think, alongside Alex Morgan, that Jenny and I were talking about for months on a second third, but surprised that maybe one of those spots went to her, and also Hal Hirschfeld as well, who's a rookie teammate with the Spirit.
Well, Jenny, let me just kind of throw to you on this. On the overall roster, is there somebody who was left off besides Alex Morgan, which we will also get into a little bit later in a more thorough way, but is there anybody else that was left off that you thought should have been on that roster?
Listen, I don't know about should have been, but I think that one of the big things that come to mind for this Olympic roster is the Mia Official thing. I know she's injured, she has the ACL, but really this is the team that was supposed to be kind of her team almost. We were so excited for Mia Official to be on this national team. She gets injured right before that W Gold Cup tournament. So it's sad to not see her on this roster, but we knew that that was going to happen. So I think maybe Lily Johannes is one of them that we would have been excited to see. She only saw about 20 minutes in the match against Korea, which maybe is not enough, but at the same time, Emma Hayes talked about it in her press conference, saying that Lily Johannes also has not decided whether or not she's going to play on the U.S. women's national team or the Netherlands national team. So she's so young, she can still make that decision. So that was kind of a two-way thing. And I think that you just continue to foster that relationship with her and let her make the best decision for her life. And it sounds like that's what Emma Hayes is doing here. I would have liked to see her, though, because I do think that we are starting this kind of new generation, this new era. We talk about all of these players on their way out, including Alex Morgan in that. But Lily Johannes is so young and so strong in what she does that I would have been excited to see her kind of start to get these caps that Emma Hayes is talking about. A lot of these players having less than 30 caps. For me, Lily Johannes is one that needs to get capped.
Well, what about you, Sandra? When we think about the team and who, would you agree with Jenny, or is there somebody else that you would have liked to see on that overall roster that you're not seeing?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna just piggyback and echo the Lily Johannes sentiment. It was good to get some clarity from Emma Hayes in the press conference, where there's a little still bit of decision making at play, and I think that's the good thing about having Emma Hayes in the driver's seat right now. She's very, very mindful and respectful of the fact that that's not an easy decision to make, especially for a 17-year-old teenager. She's got options, right? She's playing in Netherlands. She has eligibility for Netherlands women's national team, but I think it's smart that they've got her into some national team camps on the U.S. side of things to kind of get her integrated as well. I would have loved to have seen her on this roster, maybe even in an alternate sense. I was at that game in Minnesota where she made her debut, and it was incredible to watch in real time. I mean, we're talking about a kid that's playing ahead of their years, and teammates at this point who are already referring to her as like the most mature teenager that they've ever met, whether it was Crystal Dunn or Rose Lavelle in mixed zones, where we were asking her about Lily Johannes. So they're all very high on her, from coaching staff to teammates as well. And yeah, part of these rosters dropping are playing those what if games. What if Mia Official didn't get hurt? What type of 6 months will we have seen from her? Because that's really where Alex Morgan got that opportunity to shine again. She got back into that Gold Cup because of the ACL injury to Mia Official. And so now we've sort of seen the forward pull kind of take shape in what it is now. So I think Johannes is a great shot for all of them, especially because I think there's been a lot of conversation around the midfield and how that could look going forward into the Olympics.
Well, you talked about that debut with Johannes, and none of the players that are on this team have won Olympic gold. That was one thing that I saw earlier that I thought was really interesting. And the last time that USWNT won gold was in 2012. When you look at that and you look at the team that Emma Hayes selected, Jenny, we'll start with you. What do you think about the team that she has selected and what it says about her and her future in this? Like, has she made in the mark that she's made?
I think that what Emma Hayes said she is focusing on is trying to get experience with the younger players. Something that kind of stood out to her was the fact that there were a lot of players that had a ton of caps, but then there were very few that had, more than 30 caps. And I think that that's exactly where the national team has been for a while. You become a veteran on this team and there's no way you're going to ever be moved from your spot. Correct me if I'm wrong here, Sandra. And you just kind of continue to be on the national team, whether or not you are performing or not. And I think that Emma Hayes has done the hard thing of kind of moving on from some of these players. And I think that it's a good thing right now. I have to be honest. I've been asking for a change of era, a change of guard for a while now. And I think that listening to Emma Hayes in her press conference today, it seems like she's also very excited and very much moving in that direction to make sure that people are getting caps, people are getting seen. And it's not so much, it's not a political thing, but it's less of, you have determined yourself as this player and now you cannot be moved. Now it is a consistent competitive thing. And that's how the team gets better, right? Sandra mentioned the competitiveness of bringing those alternates in. Hey, you're one of those 18 players, but you're not performing. Someone is right there knocking on your back door. That's not how the alternate situation works, but just so you're aware, she's ready to take your spot. And I think that that makes the team better.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think when the roster dropped, I think that was like if you weren't sold on it before, you better be sold on it now. Like the Emma Hayes era is here, and this roster I think absolutely reflects all of those things. I think in all of the coverage that we've done of her and the build up to these Olympics, getting to sit down with her in New York, being at that game in Minnesota, kind of seeing how she operates within the team, it was evident then to now that she wanted to get her fingerprints, on this team as soon as possible, especially with the Olympics up ahead. And sometimes that means finding yourself making those difficult decisions. It goes way, way back to last December when U.S. Soccer was trying to figure out who they were going to hire in this role. And part of the things that they had on their checklist was they wanted someone that had a tactical mind, who wanted to switch up formation, someone who was an effective communicator, and someone who wasn't going to be afraid to make bold decisions. And I think all of those types of things are reflected in some of these roster decisions today with Emma Hayes.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. There were a couple other things that I wanted to just highlight before we move on to Alex Morgan talk, and that is that Katerina Macario, I thought it was great that she was back on the team, especially after Emma Hayes saying that it took her 3 tries. Like, I thought it was hilarious to get her on the phone because she was in the gym. I mean, listen, you want your players in the gym, right? But I thought that was awesome. And then also the forwards pool that are there. One thing that was really amazing to me was that they're all Black women. There was actually a specific tweet that I wanted to point out. The Lauren line said, "An all Black forward rotation. Do you know how exciting this is going to be for young Black girls watching the Olympics for the first time and get to see this? I can't wait." And that's definitely something that stood out to me because I can't wait to see it either. So I just want to point those things out. I know representation is huge on every level, and that for me was definitely something that I'm excited to see. But one thing we won't be seeing, unfortunately, is Alex Morgan. She was not selected to be on the roster. She was left off. First time since 2008, excuse me. And, it's hard to see a player like this being left off of a roster. But I think going back into the Emma Hayes conversation and the mark that she's making on this, it's one of the ones that she made, certainly. And it's important for the future of the team, right? And obviously the Olympics. What were your initial thoughts when you saw, Sandra, what was your initial thought when you saw that she was left off the roster?
Oh my goodness, I gotta bring it on to another show. We chatted a little bit of this on A3 earlier when we did like a complete live reaction. We're talking a minute after it dropped, and Jenny could merch on this. Like, we always have like texts and chats and threads and all that going. And one of my reactions was like, oh my God, she did it. Meaning like Emma Hayes actually made that move. That was my sincere reaction because I didn't know if it was going to be a move that she was going to be able to make. Not that didn't think that she could make it, but be able to. Because the thing about Emma Hayes' arrival to U.S. soccer is that she's cut a little bit different from her predecessors. She's a little bit of a different coach in that her experience and her self-awareness and the way she carries herself and navigates the space is different from those predecessors. And sometimes maybe going against the status quo, like Jenny was touching on a little bit, how maybe some of the program's culture has been, where you just sort of have players who kind of develop up within this program and eventually they get to, walk off and when they want to walk off and they're walking off with a ton of caps and a ton of national team games under their belt. That's maybe not necessarily going to be the case anymore with someone like Emma Hayes. So that was absolutely my reaction. I was like, wow, like it actually happened. She had to make that call and she did it. So kudos to her. I was respectfully surprised.
I think that what Sandra is getting at here, Alicia, is so important. It's the fact that the predecessors were not in a position or didn't have the personality to maybe make that huge call or multiple of those huge calls with players that have been on the roster for a while. And maybe it was time for them to kind of phase out and they were unwilling to do so or didn't think it was their time to do so yet. I'm not saying that Alex Morgan is not a great soccer player, whatever it may be, but I'm saying that for the U.S. women's national team to be competing at the level where they're winning World Cups again, you have to be able to let go. You have to be able to have people ready next in line. And that's not what we've been seeing lately. We're seeing a huge hole when X player is injured and we're thinking, oh my God, we have no one else that plays in this position. That is not the position that the U.S. women's national team should be in, considering the pool that the U.S. has of women's soccer players that are so strong. So I think that what Emma Hayes has done for the greater, viewers that have been watching this national team for so many years is made a call that a lot of coaches or potentially federation or, certain leadership was unable to make. And Emma Hayes can do that because of her pedigree.
Yeah. And I don't know if it's so much like the Alex Morgan of it all too. You also like have to take it to like the soccer a bit. Like respectfully, like Alex Morgan has had a very up and down season with San Diego Wave. We're talking 0 goals through 8 games. These are performance metrics that the coaching staff are going to look at and say, this isn't exactly providing for the team. So we have to go in another direction. And again, whereas maybe in years past, if it was not an Alex Morgan, maybe it was an Abby Wambach, and maybe now if this was a different era, it's an Abby Wambach that goes to a major tournament despite not playing for club, and here we are in a different era and a different time. And in this version, it's Alex Morgan, but the coach is Emma Hayes and she's making that call.
And I'm sure it was a hard call to make. That's one thing about being a coach. You got to make those hard calls. And she certainly did that. But specifically, when it comes to Alex Morgan, do you think that this is the end of her time with USWNT? I'll start with you, Jenny.
Yeah. I think that when you think about this forward list, okay, let me read it out to you so you understand the talent that we're dealing with that is coming up and will only continue to get better. They're already becoming synchronized and they're kind of in sync with each other. Crystal Dunn, that one is a weird one, okay? So we're going to leave that out of this conversation because she's so versatile and plays in many different positions. So she's not as much of what I'm talking about as the younger players that are now coming into this exact position. Sophia Smith, Mal Swanson, Jaden Shaw, Trinity Rodman. When you think about these players, at what point does Alex Morgan win out over these players? Sandra, like actually.
I think it depends, right? The highs and the lows of a pro career. Jenny, you know that better than anybody else. I mean, sometimes it 1 week you'll be here, and then another week you'll be, somewhere else. So, but I'm with you. I think hearing you rattle off those names, I think it's a testament to where the program is at this point. I, as far as a major international tournament with this U.S. women's national team, yeah, it looks like maybe we're officially looking into a new era. I don't know if she's done with the national team as far as maybe in the future she might get a call up based on form. I think that's always a possibility. It really just depends on a player's form at this point, I think, under this era. But for right now, with this cycle, this international cycle with a World Cup and an Olympics back to back, we're talking 4 years out was going to be the next cycle, and you look, a player has has those conversations with themselves, with their families, what they want next for themselves. And as far as a major international tournament with Alex Morgan, this was likely the last dance, and we're not going to see her part of this roster.
Yeah, and obviously we don't like to see it, but it is part of sports. But one thing I will say about Alex is her response that she had this morning, basically saying that, it hurts her not to be on this roster,
Yeah.
as it should, obviously, but also that she's going to be there right along with everybody else cheering on the team. Class act, obviously on every level. So while we don't like it, we could on many levels understand it, and we're just looking forward to cheering on the team with everybody, including Alex, coming up. But one thing that we could not leave here without talking about is the inclusion of midfielder Korbin Albert. So a lot of people have been talking about this morning when the roster was announced. But in the past, Korbin has appeared to have homophobic and transphobic um, tweets and conversations, I guess. And also, there was times when it was looked to see that Korbin had been making light of Megan Rapinoe's Achilles injury. Um, and, later, Korbin did apologize and say, that it was going to be, I think the team said that it was going to be dealt with internally. But, many people are saying that because of these things, that this player should not be included in the roster. What do you think about that? And what does it say, Jenny, about the accountability that, the league is having for these types of things occurring?
Well, league-wise, she doesn't play in the NWSL, so it's a little bit less in our hands. She plays for PSG.
Yep.
I'm gonna go ahead and let Sandra answer first because I think I have a different take than most people on this. But go ahead, Sandra.
Oh, setting it up. I'm ready to hear it when you got it, Jenny. But look, I first want to just say, like, I appreciate and respect you bringing this on. We need to talk now, Alicia, because it could be uncomfortable, for people to chat about when it comes to you know race, homophobia, other LGBTQ issues, other social issues. Folks want to, for some reason, shy away from that when it comes to talking about sports, as if players themselves don't identify in certain ways as athletes, right? So I appreciate you even like wanting to touch on it before you go, because, and rightfully so, because a lot of people are reacting to it. It's not something that is just has come out of nowhere. This has been um something that's been ongoing, and I think it was interesting to hear the way Emma Hayes even kind of addressed a question in it in the press conference as a situation that had occurred before she even arrived to the team. So, uh, meaning Korbin Albert's questionable social media activity, which, let's call it what it was. She reposted and shared anti-LGBTQ things, sent content and sentiment across her own personal accounts. That's what happened. That's what she did. That is the thing that she apologized for. And because that came to light based on pressure from former players, current players, a legend in Megan Rapinoe, she only then apologized. An apology that is now gone to the internet because she posted that on her Instagram stories. So an apology that got put out there after pressure and now no longer exists. And this is also a player who has, been now referenced by the coach in a press conference and by players, because Alex Morgan and Lindsey Horan were compelled at one point ahead of She Believes Cup in a press conference to address that. They came out with a co-statement and reaffirmed the U.S. Women's National Team as a place of allies of the LGBTQ plus community, and a place where players identify as such. So it has to be a welcoming place, and that they were deeply, deeply disappointed in that. So all of those things matter. I think when you think about putting together a roster, it makes not only the general public wonder, but I'm sure the coaching staff and teammates wonder, where are we going to go from here? And for Emma Hayes, she was vocal about that and said that she's on this roster based on merit. And I respect that as a difficult position that she's in. But within the same quote, Alicia, she also references some of the struggle that Korbin Albert has gone through, that it has affected her performance, and you can see that decline. So it's curious to me, um, to make this decision and name her to a roster when you also are noticing her decline in performance. So is it just about is it about soccer? Is it not about soccer? It just leads to more and more questions, you know. So she had a very good Gold Cup with the U.S. Women's National Team. It was an incredible February that she had. She is someone who has shown that she can play a ton of games in a quick timeline, which is what you want for the Olympics. And I think that is ultimately what won over Hayes and the staff to get her on there. But this isn't just going to go away, because when you harm and do and have harmful acts, and the hurt is so loud, that's going to continue to resonate until all of that work that they talk about that they're doing is kind of expressed and shown a little bit along the way. So I think there's still a little bit of wait and see approach here on it.
Yeah, and when you're talking about performance and you're saying that, you know, maybe the performance has been a little bit rocky, and this could be a deal breaker when you have so many other people that could be in that spot as well, that brings that into question, right? Like, are you really kind of what you say you are in supporting, you know, this community, or are you just about to play? And even then, you're saying that there could be possibly, you know, some rocky stuff going on with her play. So it doesn't make sense to me all around. What do you think, Jenny?
You know, I think this is interesting because we've talked about it a ton. And,
Yeah.
you know, especially behind the scenes on Attacking Third, I think that I have had the conversation with many people outside of work as well. And I always come to butt heads with people on this because it is kind of drastic, right? So this is purely my opinion, but we are at a point when we are meeting like intolerance with intolerance. And the fact that Korbin Albert was very intolerant towards a subset of people was never okay. And we were all very upset when it happened. But what can our response be? It can either be to also be intolerant towards her and say, you know what, because you don't share, you know, understanding, you are now forever out, and we will not embrace you and try to teach you and learn with you. And um, for me, that doesn't seem like the right answer, just because then we are just consistently spreading ourselves further and further apart. I think at some point we have to come and say, you know what, we don't agree with how you view this, and let's explain why. And you know what, it shouldn't be on, you know, certain people to explain that, but that's where we're at right now. Either you continue to just be intolerant and say, you know what, this kind of person is not what we want on the national team, so we will never talk to you. And then you alienate a whole group of people, which has alienated another group of people, and then you're just continually just saying no. And I just feel like at some point someone has to give, and I think that giving with, hey, let's go ahead and understand that this is a young woman who maybe was raised with certain ideals, who didn't know, and now we can welcome her into a community that informs her, and maybe she can then go back to her home and educate as well. You know what, this may sound extreme and otherworldly, but that is the only way that I see potential growth, as opposed to just continuing to spread us further and further apart. Mind you, I am not someone that she aimed her hate towards. So me speaking on it may be completely incorrect, and people could be like, Jenny, you have no idea what you're talking about. But just the acknowledgement of when I, as a minority, have been met with, you know, someone not accepting who I am, if I just continue to, you know, fight with that, it doesn't really bridge any gaps. So I don't know. That's my feeling. But Sandra, correct me if I'm wrong. Like, I'm just trying to make it work and trying to make things move forward in growth.
I think it's a look, it's your perspective, Jenny. It's yours. It belongs to you. So it's a fair one. And like you and I, you know, we go back a ways, and I'm always going to be open to whatever, to receive whatever you have to receive. And I think the biggest thing that I respect out of everything that you just said is the fact that you recognize and understand that you were not part of the community that maybe received some of that hurt and that harm from the activity, you know, so Corbin Albert's social media activity. And I think that is maybe like a key difference, I think, right now between you and maybe someone in her position she's 20 years old. You're 100% correct. Like there's of course room to grow. So I think sharing your kind of glass half full perspective, I do hope that this work that the team says is internal right now is actually taking place. But the thing is I know folks always want some sort of public accountability, and I think that's also the difficult side of this conversation as well, because what does that really mean, or what does that really look like? I referenced an Instagram apology that doesn't actually really exist anymore. So what is Korbin Albert kind of working with her team and on herself to make sure that she is a respectful teammate, a respectful, kind human being. These are words that like Emma Hayes used as well. She said she's what did she say? Tremendous human being. Okay, that's great. I hope that that's the case, and I hope that she continues to evaluate how to be a tremendous human being when it comes to the LGBTQ plus community.
Yeah, I could not agree more. Obviously there's so many sides to this, and there's so many feelings in and around it, which there should be. I just hope that the accountability is definitely there. We're not seeing a lot of it, but I hope that it is there. And that I hope that we continue to see a change, right? That's the only way in this case that we would be able to kind of measure that, because we haven't had a lot besides the apology that went away in stories. So but definitely so many things to talk about with this roster. We're already having really amazing conversations in and around it. And if this is just the start, I just can't wait to see what actually happens when we start playing these matches, because it's
Right.
going to be a lot to talk about. And I'm sure we'll have both of you back. But thank you so much for being here, talking about this drop. I know it's been a long day for both of you and you have more conversations to have, but thanks for coming to We Need to Talk Now to talk all about it. So thank you guys. Appreciate
Thanks,
it.
Alicia. Appreciate you.
Yeah, this was awesome. Anytime I get to work with you or Jenny is a good day. So this was great. Don't ever lose that, Jenny. I love you. We need more people who are sincere and kind-hearted. Don't ever lose that.
Yeah, but
I know that was hard to do.
We have to. I don't know, man, because truly, I keep thinking